Good morning, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest episode. Here are up the cherries in all departments of cherry picking. It is the last cherry picking before the last game of the season. There is going to be one more next week, which we are going to have a little look over all our predictions and see whether or not we were right. We were wrong. But firstly, let's get stuck into this. But I have got to my left, no, to my left, to my right, I don't know. I have got Mr. Matthew Harrison. How you doing, Matt?
Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here for another bumper edition of Cherry Picking. Looking
Excellent.
forward to it. So, lot to cover.
Fantastic.
So, going to enjoy it.
Do you know what it is? It's because when I film myself, I point to the left, but it actually looks like I'm pointing to the right, and it just completely confuses me.
It is what it is. But there's no confusion with me, is there?
But yes, we have got Manny just down below. That's a nice, easy one, isn't it?
That's right. Easy like tomorrow morning, as it were, as Lionel Richie would say. And yep, always happy to do this. Happy to have been doing this the whole season. And yeah, today should be good. The next one should be better. But let's get this one underway.
Definitely. And just before we get going, hello to everybody on Spotify that is listening to us on there. So do let us know what you think, and do come over to the YouTube channel if you want to see our lovely mugs and watch us instead. And of course, we've done some really good content this week. The videos have gone a little bit mad, haven't they? I'm thinking probably about 6 or 7 videos in a week. Need to calm it down a little bit, but hey ho, it's been fun. So, where do we start? We've covered off the Manchester United game in quite some detail. I think, we will come to Everton. We will come to this big game. To be honest, I've been talking about this game all week. So let's talk about something different, shall we?
Yeah,
Shall we talk about players that have worn the number 17 shirt? And this number was picked by Helen Doe. Hello, Helen. Hope you're well. And do you want to run through it, Matt?
Yeah.
Almost like Heaven 17, this could be Helen 17, as it were.
He's full of it. Do you know what? It's brilliant. Seeing as I interviewed a musician this week, and you know what? That video, I've got to say, was such a pleasure to do because Ocean Colour Scene, I absolutely loved them growing up. The day I caught the train, and we caught the train, I should say, the Riverboat song, watching TFI Friday. I keep calling it TFI Fridays, but of course I mix it up with TGI Fridays, which of course is the restaurant chain, or was the restaurant chain. The one in Paul's closed down actually, but yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to do. So, yeah, Helen 17s. I'll see you've got me.
17s. Helen 17s. There you go.
Helen's Heaven 17s. Go on. Let's take it away.
Let's go with the first one from 1999. William Huck. Don't think Manny maybe had to guess. Well, you might be able to guess the link, but we signed Huck from Arsenal. Believe it or not, he was an Arsenal youngster. Yeah, he was an Arsenal youngster. Coming as a left-sided midfielder. Fielding at left back a few times as well, and to be fair, he looked pretty decent at left back. Unfortunately, he was unable to really get a good run in the team for any sort of real length of period of time. So it was kind of, amongst the substitutes or not in the squad really. But yeah, when we first signed him, he looked like quite an exciting player. but yeah, unfortunately didn't materialise out to much.
Yeah, I think the reason why you're able to get him is because, Arsene Wenger came in the middle of the 96-97 season, and of course in 98 we won the double. So we were starting to build a new exciting team with the likes of Overmars and Petit and Vieira and so forth. We even let Ian Wright leave the club. David Platt also retired after that double winning season. So it wasn't. I just don't know if Arsene was really keen on promoting too many youth players at the time, but so that's probably why Huck wasn't able to have much luck, as it were.
Yeah.
Huck had no luck.
He's full of rhymes today, isn't he? He, of course, AS Monaco, of course, where Arsene Wenger wasn't he, before, if I'm right in thinking, Manny?
He was, but actually he sort of came to Arsenal via Nagoya Grampus 8 in Japan, where of course a certain Gary
Yes.
Winston Lineker ended his footballing career after playing for Spurs and England. So yeah, obviously, I think, hopefully he had some good. I want to just take a look and see how many games he played for Monaco. Again, not too many. Scored a few, but then no. Yeah, he was at Monaco as a youth player and then moved on to some other clubs in France, I think.
Yeah. I wonder, if it was one of Arsene Wenger's backroom team, or if Arsene saw some promise in him at a young age. Sometimes these young players look fantastic on the training pitch, and then when it transitions into, the big games, not always, that promising. But no, it's quite an interesting story, that one. The last anybody knows of him, he was at a club called Van de Port-Servi. That's a mouthful. Of course, in France.
It's
And
Vendée Poiré-Servi.
That sounds better.
that does sound better, yeah, rather than my broken French. I don't think he's there anymore by the looks of things. So there we go. There we go. Well, he would be 44 years old now.
Yep, 44 exactly.
Would he?
Yeah, 44 years old.
44
See,
years old.
the encyclopedias of knowledge we are here.
Yeah.
So make sure you hit a subscribe, and then you get more and more useless information. To be honest, we love it. We love it. Go on, Matt.
Move on to the next one.
Yes.
Somebody that we would know. Alan Connell.
Yes. Yes.
Now, when he joined us, come from Ipswich, amongst the youth team. I think he was recommended by Matt Holland to Sean O'Driscoll. I believe that's the story. But the season with the playoff final, 2003 playoff final, he had a nasty injury quite early on in the season, but he was quite prolific at the start of that season. I think he scored something like 7 goals in 9 games or something like that. Then he broke his leg.
Yeah.
I think I was there. Exeter away, rings a bell. I think he broke his leg, ended his season. But he was really, really good. Eventually, obviously, we let him go. Unfortunately, but he did obviously make a comeback, which when we do another shirt number, we'll see his comeback. But
yeah,
it was always a talented player. I even remember watching him play for Poole Town a few times, and that was quite funny when you see the ex-pro on the pitch and the opposition. I can't remember who they were. I remember they were wearing a purple kit, and this was a Tuesday night game, and they brought on this big bloke. We were calling him Ruddock on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And they brought him on purely just to crunch the ex-pro, which was Alan Connell. But yeah, giving Paul Town a little bit of a shout out there.
Didn't he play in the same team as Charlie Austin? Or did their paths not cross?
No. This was right at the end of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I occasionally pop down there because obviously I only live a stone throw away from Tattenham. So
Yeah.
myself and the father-in-law sometimes goes down and just to watch a bit of football on a Tuesday night. And yeah, we watched Alan a couple of times play for Paul. And like I said, he got crunched by this proper big player. He just sat on the bench. He couldn't do 90 minutes, but he did 15 and come on, and it was, you could see the manager pointing at, Connell, that's your man, get on him.
Yeah.
He did. He crunched him, put him out of the game. But yeah, good player. Good player.
Yeah.
Also played in a Carbarero or Capital One Cup final. I believe was it Bradford City, I believe.
Yeah. I think you're right. There we are. That is Andrew Sermon.
Andrew Sermon, yeah, when he first had his first time down here on loan from the Saints. From what I can remember, made quite a good impact on his loan spell. I think he was there for the season. I think he was on loan for the season. You can see he was a talented player then, and he was going to have a decent career, and a decent career he did go on to have, didn't he? And
of course, come back
again in the Championship era, which soon became the Premier League era. So yeah, and he's now back again. They should call him Boomerang Sermon.
Yeah, he loves it here.
He's now obviously part of the under-18 setup, isn't he?
And isn't Alan Connell a part of that setup too, the development squad manager?
He is, yeah. He was promoted from under-18s to was it under-23s? I think he's under-23 manager.
Yeah,
he took over from Sean Cooper. So yeah, absolutely right, Manny. Spot on.
Thank you.
Here's one for the record books. Now I couldn't actually find picture of him in the number 17 shirt. As you can see there, he's wearing a number 11 on his shorts there. That's actually a reserve game. And the way you can tell that's a reserve game is because if you look at the shirt, it says Seaward Dayu. Whereas on the home shirts for the first team, it was Seaward Vauxhall.
Yes.
So, yeah. And in the other picture there, he's got number 8 on his shorts. So I could only find pictures of him playing in reserve games. This guy is called Connell Platt.
Yes, yeah.
Connell Platt.
I'm trying to think of who else he played for, Connell Platt.
I've got a funny feeling Port Vale was one of them.
Nope.
No?
Nope. Liverpool youth, who of course went on to Bournemouth, didn't play a first team game for either of those clubs, had loan spells at Morecambe and Weymouth, joined Weymouth and then moved on to the likes of Rushden and Diamonds, Forest Green Rovers, Cambridge United and Lincoln City. And sort of in the lower divisions for the most part.
So that'd be why I couldn't find a picture of him in his actual allocated squad number, because he didn't actually play in it. But yeah. Now Manny said Liverpool. I do remember him coming from the Liverpool setup. Now Manny's mentioned that, but yeah.
I remember the Weymouth, connection because I seem to. Do you know what I mean? I do take an interest sometimes in Weymouth. Of course they've gone through such a bad time. They seem to bob up, don't they, into the National League and then drop all the way back down, and then they'll rise all the way back up, and they just seem to, because they've gone back down to where they were. again.
I believe one of the Bournemouth sides, I don't know which side it is, has got a pre-season friendly at Weymouth, I believe.
Yeah.
And I know that because someone is playing for Weymouth that I know of. And I think some of us are good. If it's a Saturday, some of us are going to go down there on a bit of a Beano. And,
Yes. Beano to Weymouth.
And have a few drinks and watch some football, even if it's the under-18s or whoever. But yeah, Weymouth, funny side, aren't they? They're a bit of a yo-yo.
Yeah.
Seem to be getting somewhere. Get a manager in place, like when Mark Moseley was there, he did extremely well, and was looking like he was going to take that club far. But obviously, the temptation of league football took him away from Weymouth, and he took the challenge at Southend at the time, didn't he? Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're a bit of a yo-yo. But yeah, well, cheers for that, Manny, because I didn't realise he'd played for so many clubs. So it's always nice to find out some facts about old players that have been and gone.
Definitely.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to help.
Here we go.
That's Max Gradle.
This is Max Gradle. Yeah, fantastic. This kiddie was awesome. Awesome. Even when he was this age, he was fantastic. On loan from Leicester. He was such a great, pacey, energetic player.
Yeah.
Just hungry for the ball all the time. Little tricky player. You wouldn't want to be a fullback defending against him. And it's just, at the time when he left, it was a shame he did leave. But obviously, as the fairy tale continued, he would obviously grace the shirt again. But yeah, fantastic little player. And you could see why he went on to earn international honours and play at a decent level for the vast majority, if not all of his career, really.
Yep.
Over 100 caps for the Ivory Coast and a member of the side that won the Cup of Nations in 2015.
There you go.
What a star he's been.
Yeah. What a career. What a career. But after Mr. Gradle, we had Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Who's also represented Weymouth, as we were on the Weymouth subject.
Yep.
Obviously, a few weeks ago it was announced the unfortunate illness that he currently has, which obviously we touched on a little while ago.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any updates. I don't know if anyone else has seen any updates, but
April 30th. It was just before the Leeds game, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just before the Leeds game. But yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, Josh makes a full recovery.
Yeah, we all send our love and support from the channel.
Definitely, most definitely.
Absolutely.
The shirt was vacant for a little while.
The
shirt was vacant for a little while, and then this man come in.
Josh King.
Who obviously, I'm sure we would touch on again a little later on.
Yes.
Another subject, another topic of the show. But yeah. So yeah, he was one with a number 17. And bang up to date.
Jack Stacey. Jack
Stacey, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll cover him off as well.
We should be covering him very, very shortly. So, but that's worn the number 17s.
Yeah.
Number 17 shirts over the years. And next week, we do already have a shirt number that was picked. It was picked on our Facebook page. There was a post a few weeks back. No, not even a few weeks back. I think it was...
it's the same time as Helen picked this one, wasn't it, really?
Yeah. And on the same comment as Helen, another number was picked, which I'm just trying to remember what it was.
Yeah.
And I know it was a lad called Harvey.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was Harvey Taylor. And next week for the last cherry picking for the summer, it will be the number 5.
The number 5. So there we are. There we are. So that will be our next cherry picking number. So that is, of course, the numbers. Do submit your requests for the new season as well, because we will probably come back to that, won't we, as well, Matt?
Yes, yeah, we will come back to that definitely. That will return in August.
Yes. Well, let's go on to our next piece, which let's bring that up now. And we said about Jack Stacey, players out of contract. Do they stay or do they go? So the AFC Bournemouth have a number of players that are out of contract this summer. There is obvious ones. There's also some not so obvious ones as well. So what we're going to do is run the rule over each of these and decide, shall we renew these players or shall we not? Do remember that the squad sizes, if I'm right in thinking, guys, it remains at 25 next season, or is it being extended by the Premier League?
As far as I'm aware, it's 25.
It is still 25. Right, cool. Well, let's go through these. So we'll keep that number in mind because we'll probably make some signings as well. Starting off with somebody who has been here for a long time, Junior Stanislas. Of course, was fantastic in the Premier League for the club. Got us there in the first place as well, part of that team. Has been very unfortunate with injuries. Signed back in 2014, so he is nearly at what you would call the testimonial stage. What
Yes.
do you reckon?
Yes, he is very nearly at the testimonial stage.
2 seasons to go, according to my calculations. I think it's for 10 seasons, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
It is, yeah.
would be after he reached the 26th of June 2024 would be when he would be. So that season would be classed as his testimonial year. What can you say about a superb player like Junior Stanislas?
Nice man, dedicated player, hard working.
Good player. The championship season of 2020-21 was his most prolific in front of goal.
Yes.
And he had a really, really good season that year. But I mean, if you look back through his record, like the first season he played for us, 20 appearances, he scored twice. Then obviously he got promoted. He scored 5 goals in his first season in the Premier. 3 in the Premier, 2 in the Cup that year. I think 2 of them was 2 of them against Everton. Was it 2 against Everton? Or
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was. He's got a knack of that, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he's been a real good performer. But the only thing is as you can see throughout those seasons there, especially in the last 2, this one and last season, his injury form is through injury is it's been hampered. His career has been hampered towards the end of it, and even during the mid part of his career, he's picked up injuries, which has been a real shame because when he has played for Bournemouth, he's been a real asset, a real decent player to watch.
Agree.
But his contract is coming up to an end now, and as you know, we can only have a certain number of players in the Premier League squad. So it's a case of we'll put it round to the 3 of us, and Craig, you can go first. Do you sign him up or do you release?
it's horrible to say it, but I would have to release him because he's a lovely man. He's, a model professional. He's been very unfortunate with injuries. If that wasn't the case, I would say, yeah, sign him up. He's still got, another season maybe in him on a short-term contract. The problem is the Premier League is so brutal that you can't really carry anybody, and maybe the time has come for him to maybe drop into the Championship and find another club. You know, I wouldn't begrudge him actually going to that lot down the M27. Um, I think he would be an asset to them next season because I don't think they're going to find it particularly easy. But I think personally, there's too much of a risk at this level, and I think that we have he's kind of digressed, and of course the players that we're bringing in, and what we will expect to bring in during this summer, at this point in time, if you compare Junior now to a player coming in now, I I can't see where Junior's. It would be unfair on him to actually keep him at the club, I think, because he wouldn't get game time.
I'd have to agree with that completely. And I think I should actually apologize for a mistake because taking a look at his profile, he has completed 9 seasons, and this would be his 10th season. Would that be enough for a testimonial? I'm not too sure, but with his game time having dried up, as both of you have said, it's a question of it becomes a bit of a luxury, and you can't really afford to keep players like that. But I don't know what his situation is. Is he still fit enough to be a part of the squad? Because there is a part of me that wouldn't mind Gary O'Neill taking him in, putting him in the squad, and maybe giving him a final run out, as it were, Goodison Park, maybe. But again, if seriousness and ruthlessness dictates that you can't do that, then so be it. And I think I'm going to have to agree with the both of you. It is going to have to be time for him to move on. It is really sad that it's come to this, and I think Manchester United fans have a similar tale with Phil Jones.
Yes,
making it clear that he would leave the club as well. But as you've said, Craig, it's a brutal league, and you can't really carry passengers for the sake of it, and that's sort of how it proves. And I think it might be time to say bye bye, Junior.
Yeah, I unfortunately, like I say, love the player.
Yeah,
Got his name and his number on one of my shirts. Unfortunately, I think from a footballing decision, a football perspective, I release.
Do you think he will make an appearance maybe this weekend just for a last hurrah?
I don't think so. I think if he's going to make an appearance, Craig, I think he might turn up for Steve Cook's testimonial.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Although saying that, if he does make an appearance this weekend, you could probably hear a pin drop around Goodison Park because he does like scoring against them.
He does. He does.
So yes, 40,000 Scousers will be shitting themselves, put nicely.
Hardly nicely, but whatever.
Shall we move on?
Our first out of contract player, then Junior Stanislas, we decide to release. Our next player is Jack Stevens. So his loan ends. So 17 games for us. He's looked good at times. Do we sign up or do we send back? What's the argument, Craig?
I'd sign him up. I think he's dependable. He's good in the air. He's solid. He's one of those players. He's a little bit like Steve Cook and Simon Francis, where they just get on with their job quietly, and that is Jack Stevens. That's Jack Stevens. I'd sign him up. short-term deal. It's obvious he probably feels a bit regretful.
Is he still under contract at Saints?
I don't know actually. I think
I thought he had a year to go on his Saints
I
contract.
think he has, but I think they'll probably let him go because of the amount of money he's on wage-wise. So I think it probably will be a cut price deal, but I would pay it, and I think get me up, here for a year. You never know what might happen. We might Zabani, sorry. I keep calling him Zabarini. I keep making him Italian. Or Senesi might get injured. Senesi might leave the club if this Man City rumor is true. I don't think it is, but
then again, we do also have a player called Chris Mepham.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true. But I just feel that Jack Stevens, when he come in, provided a bit more of a steal. Chris Mepham at the start of this season, if you remember, I was saying I don't think he's up to it. I don't think and he's come out of the woodwork and shown that he can do it at this level. So I don't always get this right, but I think Jack Stevens, sign him up. I think a 1 year deal. I wouldn't go higher than that. A 1 year deal, cut price figure. He's not going to cost a lot, and he's going to, when called upon, he's going to do his work. Very very well, and quietly as well.
Yeah, interesting. Mr. Manny, what do you think?
When it comes to Stevens, I think it's clear to see that he is quite highly valued. The only problem is he is, of course, on loan from your neighbours up the M27, as you rightly said. So they're going to have the final say. And given that they've gotten relegated, they are going to want to see him as someone who will be fairly integral to their attempts to try to stay up. Sure, they're going to release a lot of players, either due to them being effectively surplus to requirements or ironically being exceptionally important that they don't want to leave them, let them go. And I think Stevens could fall into the latter category. So they're going to have the final say. So if you can sign him maybe for a year with an option of going even further, then that would be terrific. The only problem is, having had him for a season on loan, if you only sign him for 1 year, he may possibly feel as though, he's not really he's being given the short end of the stick here.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have to be very careful with him. And also, if you got Senesi and Zaberni and Mepham and one or two other defenders, the question will be asked, will he get adequate game time? Although you definitely need some competition for places with the competition. So, yeah, I'd say try to get him, but good luck taking him from a Saints team who are going to need all the help they can get. Why else do you think they pulled Jan Bednarek back from Aston Villa?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they're going to need Stevens, in my opinion.
I think you're right. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with this one. And I'll tell you for why. Look at it from the Saints' perspective. I know what you just said, Craig, about the money he's on, but
yeah,
clubs do tend to sometimes normally put a relegation clause into a contract, don't they?
Yeah.
Imagine if Southampton was sensible, there'd be relegation clauses in the majority of the contracts that they've given their players. So that might mean his money goes down, and Southampton want to retain him because it's going to be a very, very hard championship season. And you're going to need depth in squad. And I think, looking at it, if I was the incoming Southampton manager and he is still under contract to Saints, I'd be having him back. From our perspective, where are we in the transfer window? What are we looking at? What's our targets?
Well, exactly.
Are we targeting somebody, in no disrespect to Stevens, that might be younger and a better footballer? So it depends on the club's targeting as well. Would I be disheartened if we signed him? No, not at all. Because, like I say, he has performed well this season. It just depends on what direction the club's going in, I think, with this one.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. The only thing I would say with the relegation clauses is he might feel quite bitter about that because, of course, he's been here the whole season. He hasn't been relegated. His parent club have. So what's he going to do? Is he going to say, look, I think he'd be probably quite frustrated to have had a decent season with ourselves and then find, right, okay, your money's gone down.
Yeah, it's going to be a funny one, this one, I think.
Yeah, completely agree.
So we've got, what was it? 2 sign-ups and 1 on the fence.
Yeah.
Let's have a
Yes.
look at our next player out contract.
Go on.
I think this is going to be a very interesting one.
Oh, well, I know exactly what I think here. Yeah,
Well,
please stay.
these headlines, Craig, are current headlines that are on here, and it seems to be Crystal Palace all over it. I think this is going to drag on, I still think this is going to drag on. I don't need to say anything on this player apart from please stay.
Yeah.
My head tells me one thing and my heart tells me another. My head tells me that I think he's going. My heart tells me he's staying. And that's can you imagine a Bournemouth midfield without him?
To be honest, if he goes, I can't imagine him staying. In the Premier League. If he goes, I can't imagine him staying in the Premier League. I think it will be to Spain. I can't see. One of the articles there says Burnley. Why in a million years would you go to Burnley? A side that have recently been promoted, yet they have got Vincent Company. But at the same time, Vincent Company, great player. He's a new manager. He's done very well there. But, that necessarily, it's a huge risk there. Crystal Palace, well, they are going to finish higher than us, let's be honest. But at the same time, they have got very, very talented team. Now, the only reason why I think Palace might be eyeing Jefferson Lerma up is because they're going to get big money for either Erebesieze or Michael Elise. I think probably the latter. I think they're probably going to get big, big money because there was the rumour of PSG being in for Elise, and Elise's not going to come cheap at all. I, if I'm right in thinking, I've seen bits and pieces saying about 50, 60 million.
Well, this would obviously be a free transfer, wouldn't it? So it would only
Exactly.
add to the signing on fee, and they could give him a bumper signing on fee if that's the case.
Well, that's the thing is, they let Elise go for that big money. They give Lerma a big signing on fee. They're not having to pay anything to Bournemouth for the player, and it might even push his wages up because they're using some of that Elise fee to offset Lerma's wages. It would make perfect business sense, that, to be perfectly honest. But at the same time, why wouldn't you stay at Bournemouth, considering both clubs are Crystal Palace aren't the biggest. If they are selling these sort of players, they're not. If they were keeping Elise and Eze, and say for example, Palace was saying, look, come play with these two players in particular, you'd go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I can't imagine Palace keeping hold of Elise. Maybe they might not keep hold of either of them. In which case, is it really that much of a good move? No, not from my perspective.
No.
The thing about Lerma with me is that he's clearly become much loved by the Bournemouth faithful, and he also loves the club so much that, as you say, Craig, it would be a wrench to go to another club in the Premier League. and run the risk of having to come back to Dean Court and play. It just wouldn't really feel right. And if it is family issues that are sort of influencing his decision, as you say, he'll want to move somewhere else in Europe. Crystal Palace themselves aren't necessarily an attractive proposition because, yes, they've managed to win some games and score some goals under Roy Hodgson. He's got Eze and Zaha scoring goals again, but there's a question mark over his future at Selhurst Park. Will he stay for one more season? And even if it is for one more season, why would Lerma want to go to a club which could very well be in a little bit of a state of flux, as you say, selling some of their players? Will they be as good next season as they have been these past few games? If I were Lerma, the choice for me would be to either stay at Dean Court or move to Europe. And if there is a happy conclusion and he ends up deciding to stay at Bournemouth, then the more the merrier. I mean, he will feel the love from the fans, but he also will have to take into consideration what he can do for his family. And maybe there'll be a resolution. I do hope he does stay with you lot, but in the end, the decision is his, just as the decision on whether or not to buy Stevens will probably end up being with Southampton.
Yeah, completely agree.
But I would keep him, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got nothing to say on it apart from please stay.
Yeah,
I can't. I can talk about Lerma all night. But obviously, as we like to keep cherry pickings to a certain time scale, I can't see the Palace move myself. I agree with Manny. No. It's not such an attractive proposition, is it? And if he's going to go anywhere, he will go back to mainland Europe, Spain, somewhere like that.
You'd imagine so. Say, for example, if you replaced Crystal Palace with Arsenal there, you could say, right, okay, there's a reason for going.
Oh, mate, I'd love him
at
Arsenal. I would love him at Arsenal. I mean, there's question marks over Jorginho and Thomas Partey. If we could get someone like him with his quality at the club, defensive midfielder, of course, 33 caps for Colombia, 28, someone who has a great deal of energy, I would bite your hand off. But I don't think Arteta is really interested in him. Shows how much he knows about talent ID. I mean, look, he gave away Emi Martinez, who went on to win the World Cup, for Pete's sake.
Well, exactly.
Well, let's have a look at the next one.
Yeah.
So Lerma is a decision between all of us that he needs to stay. He must stay. He must be in that midfield next season.
Yeah, should be locked in the cupboard and not allowed out because I think he's that good. Right, moving on. Matthias Vina.
So yeah, on loan from Roma with a view to signing for 15 million. I would absolutely sign him straight away. No brainer.
Agree.
Now, if you look at it from squad depth, you've got Kelly, who's been playing left back recently, been performing well. If we sign this lad here, we're losing Jordan Zamora, as we well know. You've got two decent left backs, which one of those left backs can play in the centre. Attacking, he gives us so much more of an attacking option from fullback. So if you're playing a back five, which I'm sure we're going to do at times next season, he's going to be absolutely superb, as he's proven already. In a back five formation, I think his attacking is wonderful. The way he gets forward, I love that about fullbacks. I love attacking fullbacks that want to get forward, that want to overlap the man, that want to cut in on side. And this guy does that perfectly. And defensively, he's good as well. So for me, I'd be straight on the phone to Mr. Mourinho, sending that 15 million over because I think we should sign him. I really, really do.
Completely agree. And to be honest, I hope that there's some sort of clause in there that says that we have got first refusal, because I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he's actually worked out quite well.
To my knowledge, Craig, we have first refusal to sign him on. So
Excellent.
I would 100%.
Yeah.
I agree
I would,
completely. And sorry about that. Go ahead, mate.
no, that's all right. All I was going to say is, if I was Neil Blake, I wouldn't actually even call Mourinho. I'd just send 15 million in the post and just say, "Yeah, cheers, mate, being as ours."
Well,
Yeah, I mean, you can't send money in the post. You know that. It would have to be an RTGS bank transfer. You know the protocol. And yeah, I think he is certainly a promising talent. He has shown in the past few games that Bournemouth have played that he does offer a great deal. Roma, of course, I mean, were kind enough to send him to you lot on loan. He didn't really play too much in the Serie A. Let's also not forget, though, that Roma will be in the Europa League final, and if Mourinho were to win that, they would be in the Champions League. I think, again, with regard to these loan players, the frustrating thing is that, their future with the club will be at the mercy of the parent club managers. And if Mourinho does like what he sees in Vigna as well, I mean, he played 26 games in Serie A the previous season before playing 3 this time around and coming to Bournemouth on loan. If he values him as a good youth prospect and someone who can definitely lend more to the strength of the team, and with Champions League football potentially on the horizon, that could. Surely the player himself would love to be involved in that, and they're going to need a fairly big squad if they're in the Champions League. But if they fail to win the Europa League and they don't qualify for the CL, I'm not too sure what their position is in the league right now. I'll have to look that up and see. Mourinho might say, you know what, Matthias, go to the South Coast, enjoy playing, and just develop yourself and make a life for yourself. So again, it'll be up to the manager. But again, this is another person on for which I agree with the two of you. Keep.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
I'll tell you what. It's a good point. You can't send 15 million in the post. Maybe you'd have to send it a little bit like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Well, a couple of heavies over to Roma, and then, oh, Mr. Mourinho, here we are. There's your 15 million. We're having
If
Vina.
memory serves me right, I think former Wimbledon and Wales international Vinnie Jones was in that movie.
He was, yeah. That's who I was trying to do the impression of. That was terrible, to be fair.
Spot on, Manny. Because you see, the problem is, Manny, is that Craig likes to do these impressions and make you think he's Vinnie Jones when actually he sounds more like Frank Butcher from EastEnders. But anyway, let's move on.
Carry on.
Let's move on to our next player and our final player, Jack Stacey. Now, this one for me is a bit of a funny one, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jack Stacey. Personally, I think attacking wise, I think he's more suited as a wing back and a more attacking right sided midfielder than he is an unorthodox right back.
Yeah.
You got Smithy.
Yes.
And we all know, vice captain. But there's been some spells this season where, no disrespect to Smithy. Again, another favourite player of mine. Another one I got on one of my many shirts. It's been times where you can see maybe the pace ain't quite there. Fredericks, I mean, where's he been all season? I mean, when he has played, he's been fantastic, Fredericks. But where's he been?
Injured.
He's not fit. And when we signed him, that was the first thing a West Ham fan told me. He won't stay fit. That was the first thing I got told, which is a shame because he's a cracking player. And this is where Jack Stacey, for me, I think we need to go into the market for a new right back. For me, even though I like Stacey, I mean, he's on the shirt behind me If when everybody can see the three of us again, you'll see the Stacey shirt behind me. For me, I release. I release to create room in the squad to potentially bring in another player.
I'm going to throw a curveball here. My curveball is with regards to Adam Smith. Now, if I'm right in thinking, Adam Smith has got a year remaining on his contract.
That's correct.
I would, and this sounds ridiculous because, of course, Stacey hasn't played very much. Fredericks has been out injured. I would, if anybody comes in for Smith, or we can get some money for Smith, I would let him go.
Can't see it. No, can't see
It's
that.
probably the wages that he's on. It's probably the wages that he's on. Why clubs wouldn't? Because I think he would do a job in the championship team.
100%.
Adam Smith. Yeah. I just think
I can't see anybody wanting to physically pay money for him.
I just think that Jack Stacey
is a good
player.
I like him. Like I've said, I like him. Defensively, I do question him at times, but going forward, he's a good, strong player. His crosses sometimes are pinpoint. Some of the crosses he puts in. I mean, you could look back at the last championship season. Some of the crosses he was putting in were pinpoint. But then again, you've got to weigh up his championship, his level. I don't know. But I think personally, I see where you're coming from with your curveball, and you're absolutely right what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just think I can't see anybody coming in and paying for Smithy. For me, I'd probably, do you know what? In hindsight, what you would probably do is you'd probably let Fredericks go. Let him have his contract and go.
Yeah.
Because he can't prove his fitness, can he? Then you could possibly run with Jack Stacey and Smithy, and maybe look at bringing in a new right back to maybe replace Smithy at the end of his contract. Something like that. But maybe I'm being harsh by saying release. I mean, I like him. Do you know what I mean? I like Stacey.
I think if we can.
Wasn't he voted the most attractive player in the Premiership or something? Or have I just made this up?
What, Jack Stacey?
Yeah, did he win some poll that he was like one of the most attractive players in the Premier League?
Did he? I've never seen that in a million years. Never seen that in a million years.
Okay.
But I tell you what, that's quite funny though if he has. So yeah, if anybody knows of that poll, leave it in the comments section because we do want a bit of a giggle. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know who would he have been up against. I don't even know.
No idea.
No, it's not something I much interested in.
Gentlemen, I'm really glad that you've raised this question here because I'm just taking a look at the statistics for this season. Both Fredericks and Stacey have played about 9 games each in the Premiership, whereas the long-serving Smithy, he have he have close to 300 appearances for the Cherries, has played 22 games, and under normal circumstances, with his long service, Smithy would potentially be one of the guys trusted to captain Bournemouth. I think he did captain them once, but there is of course doubt over his long-term future, and yet he has played in 22 games. So it doesn't really help when you have a guy who's, obviously played for as long as he has, and then 2 other guys supposedly competing with him for the right back slot who've, just not been able to get a look in through injury. So I think, with regard to Stacey, I'm actually leaning towards what you're saying, Craig, and saying, you know what, it might be best that we keep him because you don't want to have a situation where. Yeah, I mean, let's say even if Smith continues to stay fit and starts as the first choice right back next season, you will still need some cover in that area. We don't even know if
Yeah,
Fredericks is going to, continue to stay fit, but we could possibly give him the benefit of doubt. And then you can look to getting a new right back in, maybe someone like, say, a Walker Peters who was with Southampton, I think, or with Southampton being relegated, they will obviously be putting up a fire sale of several of their players. I wouldn't even mind recommending Maitland Niles, except he hasn't exactly. I mean, he's done okay, but not exactly been a world beater. But maybe Bournemouth and Gary O'Neill could be the club and the manager he needs to sort of really set things right. With Southampton, it was I wouldn't say doomed from the start, but always going to be a little bit difficult for him. But I'd say keep Stacey, because with the players you've got, with their injuries and so forth, and with Smithy, get it. Maybe I don't know, maybe not necessarily getting on a bit, but certainly having a few questions asked about him. You don't want to be in a situation where you sell someone too hastily and end up regretting it later on, scrambling to buy someone. So
agree.
I'd keep him if I can.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And actually, interesting one on the subject of Maitland Niles. A lot of Bournemouth fans would probably think, I don't want to sign Maitland Niles. He's been relegated with Southampton, blah, 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 blah. I think that is a perfect reason, because he's a youngster, I think it's a perfect reason to actually sign him. And I'll tell you why, is because he has experience of that. If we're in a relegation battle, he knows what's happened and what's gone wrong this season. If he learns from that, he's going to be a better player for the experience that he's had this year.
I agree completely. I mean, obviously, at Arsenal, he was a member of the team. He did play his role in our FA Cup win in 2020, which was Arteta's first trophy. Just never seemed to get any opportunities. And I think he was also victim of a poor narrative from the press that he was only willing to play in the centre of midfield, but he'd be happy to play in whatever position that was wanted
Yeah,
of him. And of course, ironically for Southampton, he ended up being a fullback anyway. But he can play either fullback or in the centre of midfield, so he does offer you a little bit of versatility. Former England youth international, and of course, a member of the team that won the Under 20 World Cup in 2017. And he also played under Jose Mourinho at Roma. And yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be a bad shout, but you know, uh, back to Stacey, I think you might need to keep him, and maybe with Fredericks as well. You might need to monitor their progress and then move the team on from them, perhaps.
definitely. Definitely. Well, let's move on to the next part of the show, which, let me bring it up. Drum roll, please.
That's terrible.
The Up the Cherries in all departments player of the season. So there was 3 nominations. Those 3 nominations we will go through in a second. Well, the player that won it was Neto. The other nominations was Jefferson Lerma and Dominic Solanke. So Neto won it, and let's have a look at the poll results. 43%, 56 votes. Neto finished on, with Jefferson Lerma second and Dominic Solanke third. But all 3 players have been brilliant. You could have an argument for every single player being on there, really, couldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought Jeff would have won it himself. But yeah. Yeah. Down to our voting panel. Neto is crowned Up the Cherries in all departments player of the season 2022-23.
There we are. And who nominated Neto, Matt?
Not gonna say, big myself up, but I did say, and obviously a lot of people, agree with Neto as well. But like I say, like you just said, there's several, 7, 8 players that could have, Marcus Tavernier, great season. Shame about his injuries, but
Yeah.
great season.
Bill.
Phil Bill, he was unlucky not to be part of these 3 to, because obviously yourself, myself, Max, Sam, Harrison. Obviously, we picked the players. We were looking at probably having 4, but two people thought the same player, so we had we had 3 to vote for. Phil Bill could have easily been one of them. Great season he's had again. But yeah, fair play. The skipper's won it, and he's the channel's first player of the season.
There we go. There we are. So Neto is player of the season. Should we go on to our next slide?
Yeah, our next feature is Gary's Forgotten Men. So, as we know, there's players out on loan. And are they going to form part of Gary's plans for the future?
So let's get it underway. Let's start this.
Let's start.
So the first one, Gavin Kilkenny. So Gavin's been joined Stoke City on loan in July. Of course, Irish international midfielder. 4 games for Stoke and no goals. He's joined Charlton Athletic as well in January. Games for Charlton, 8 and no goals, no assists. Is he part of Gary's plans? And should we keep or sell him?
This is a funny one because I've always rated Kilkenny.
I have. I thought he was good last season. I think he's a.
Absolutely, no, you're right. I mean, the games he's played for us in the Championship. When I saw him going on loan to Stoke, I thought, yeah, cool. He's getting out there. He's going to be playing regular. Plenty of games in the season for him to play. Rather than being on the fringes of here, he might as well be out playing. Didn't work out for him, did it?
Poor Stoke team as well.
Yeah, and Charlton as well hasn't really worked out for him.
League One.
Yeah, I mean, is he part of Gary's plans? I'm going to say no.
I don't think he is anymore.
And with his contract expiring in 2026, I think we sell.
Yeah, I think you would do, and I think you'd have to just cut your losses. You never know, it might come back to haunt us, but based on what we've seen at the moment, what we've seen in Bournemouth colours hasn't been bad. But then again,
not at all.
Do you put him on loan to a side that? Because let's be honest, let's look at the 2 sides he's gone on loan to. Stoke have struggled in the Championship, and Charlton have struggled in League One. So do we look at sending him to? And it's always a risk because you never know what teams are going to be like. But let's Bolton Wanderers in League One, for example. So you send him there, see what he can do, and then if he doesn't make an impact for them, then sell.
Sorry, you carry on, Greg. Sorry.
You could make an argument for a lot of League One sides. You could make an argument for a lot of Championship sides. Would he look better if, say, for example, he went to Middlesbrough, for example, slotted into a side full of decent players, and because those players around him are good, of decent quality in that level, might he perform better? Is he one of them?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if he doesn't form part of Gary's plans, they would be willing to listen to offers. And if no offers come in, then yeah, what you're saying in terms of going out on loan, he may well find himself out on loan again in League One. Shame, because when he burst onto the scene under Eddie Howe, he looked a cracking little player. He's performed well in his 2 Championship seasons for us. Obviously, Scott Parker didn't see him as part of his plans, even though he was at the time that he didn't have a big enough squad. let him go into the Championship, and it's not worked out for him. I think this one is a no to Gary's plans and a sell. I think personally.
Curveball here, another curveball. I would say, is he part of Gary's plans? Not at the moment. Not at this level. What I would do though is I would keep him and loan him out one more time. The reasons being is that if we do that and he has a great season, but we're still in the Premier League at the end of next season, then hopefully his price will have increased. Because at the moment, we're not going to get much for Gavin Kilkenny, which is a shame because he's a talented player. But if he flops, as long as that side, have paid the majority of his wages, and somebody like Bolton, Reading, Sheffield Wednesday, somebody like that will probably do that sort of thing in League One. I say let him go somewhere like that for the season, and if it flops, then we've not lost anything.
I'm not too keen on that personally, Craig, and I'll tell you why. Because this particular season should have been the time which he could have used to really better himself. But as you said, he ended up joining a poor Stoke team. Only played 3 games, didn't last too long. He then went to Charlton, who were in a much lower division, only played 8 games. So, what is the guarantee that if you keep him and send him out on another loan deal, it's going to sort of work out as a charm?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think the one thing he has in his favor is that he is 23 years old. But having said that, it's also a sort of a crossroads sort of age. You don't want to be stuck in a situation where at 23 years old, you're going out on loan, trying to find a club where you'll get to play, sort of trying to find yourself, and then be left with precious too few years to make your mark. I mean, look, it worked out well with Emi Martinez. He was sent out on loan to more than a few clubs, the likes of Wolves and Reading and so forth. And of course, he came back to Arsenal, took his chance, won the FA Cup. But then goalkeepers and outfielders are a different breed altogether. So one scenario I would like to see happening is that an agreement is made with Bournemouth to have him sign for a club back in his native Ireland, because he also happens to be a fairly, I wouldn't say prolific, but certainly a very heavily capped youth international for the Republic of Ireland. 20 caps or so for them in 3 years for the under-21s. And it would be a shame, really, if a guy like him, who certainly has had a taste of, playing at a youth level internationally, would see his career sort of fizzle out because no English club might be interested in him. And of course, taking a look at his stats, his only season of note was in 2021-22. That was the promotion season when he obviously got you lot back to the Premiership. But sadly, he didn't make a single appearance under either Scott Parker or Gary O'Neill, because of course that was when he went out on loan and things haven't quite worked with him. There is a really, really good player in him, but then for his position, midfielder, you're not short of quality in that area. So do you just keep him and send him on loan and have him more disillusioned, or do you try to work out a deal with another club back in his native Ireland, perhaps, where he can play, sort of be closer to his family, rediscover some love for the game, and maybe take it from there and become a better player, and maybe return to England to sign for another club? I think that is probably what Gary O'Neill might look to do with him, because you can't. No, I don't think any manager would have the heart to just keep a 23-year-old on the books and have him sent out on loan season after season and sort of demoralize him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely understand actually where you're coming from. Should we have a look at the next player?
Yeah. Christian
Chris
Sadie.
Sadie.
So this season he's played 27 games and scored 7 times.
Is he part of Gary's plans? Again, No, I don't think. But is there a decent player in there? Well, he's shown that at a lower level. Could he do it at this level where we are at the moment? It's going to be a magnificent step up. I think he's one of those that maybe we should keep hold of until, to be honest, he's not got long left on his contract. Keep hold of him. And maybe at the start of next season, give him a couple of, substitute appearances. When players getting leggy, when say for example, if we're in control of a particular game, because I think there's a very talented player in there from what I've seen of him, but at the same time, is that player a Premier League player? Don't think so at the moment, but I would like to be proven wrong there.
No, not part of Gary's plans. And I would probably let him go because you got a decent league player in there. As a striker, 7 goals, 27 games. That's not what you'd call prolific. So is he going to edge any new signing that we make out of the team? Is he going to edge out anyone that's currently in the team or on the bench currently? I don't think so. So I would let go, and he's definitely not part of Gary's plans, I don't think.
Fair enough.
I mean, from this season, he certainly seems to have found the net and started to find his bearings. So, wisdom would say that maybe it would be better to let him go. But then, taking a look at your season, gentlemen, if we take a look at the goals that you've scored, I mean, the goal difference that you have of negative 33, all down to conceding 70 goals and scoring only 37.
Yeah.
I do get what you're saying when you say that you want to have a player who could possibly who could possibly, as Matt said, edge out some of these more established people in the team. But when you score 37 goals over the course of a season at the rate of exactly a goal a game with 1 game left to go, it's not really a good total.
No.
And you do understand, and you might have to consider that maybe some of these more heralded players. I know Solanke was nominated for Player of the Season, but I really do want to find out just for this particular season how many goals he's who has been your top scorer. In fact, I've got the stats right here. The top scorer in the league has been Phil Billing. And Solanke and Billing are, in fact, the top scorers for the entire season, 7 goals each. And how many does Sadie have for Shrewsbury? Lo and behold, 7 exactly. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to release him because, when a player finally somehow manages to click while on loan at a club, that could be a sign that maybe he's starting to find his feet, as it were, and maybe he could turn out to be a decent cover signing. And let's not forget, next season you will still have the League Cup and the FA Cup. Those could be games where I probably wouldn't mind seeing him have a substitute appearance or two to see if he can, find his feet there. Because I mean, with the strikers that you've got right now, I know that you've both had your doubts about Kiefer Moore. And then, of course, some Semenyo. I don't know how prolific he's been. And then Jaden Anthony obviously has lent a great deal of speed, but in terms of scoring, I'm not too sure if he's necessarily been prolific. And then, of course, you got Phil Bill and Dom Solanke. So I actually would like to think that if you do have someone like Sadie coming back in with his confidence a little bit higher, because let's not forget, it's only 21 games he's played, and the other guys will have played at least about 25, maybe 30 games or so. So, given the returns that Sadie has had, I wouldn't necessarily want to, just bin him like that. I'd look at him for one more season, but then if he doesn't make the grade, then you could say goodbye. And let's take a look at how old he is. 21 years old. I mean,
does that mean as well
there could be a lot
he
more from him?
doesn't fall into this 25 player category, or is it changing next season? Because I don't think he counts, does he?
I thought it was 21 and over, isn't it? No? Was it 23 and over?
I think it.
Can't remember. Someone's going to have to check.
Yeah, I think that's
But yeah, I mean, I've got to say on Manny's point there, he's made a very, very good point with the player.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of made me look at it from a different perspective. To be fair,
I would say keep him, gamble.
Be interested to see what happens over the summer and how much action he gets during pre-season.
Yeah, I would gamble, keep him another season, and just see, because we won't get much for him anyway because he's out of contract next year. But you never know; there might be a good player in there. He has lift off, and then we could offer him a new contract at that point. It's we shall see with regards to that. Let's look at the next one. Oh, this is a heartbreaking one. This is Emiliano Macondes, of course, signed from Brentford. He is on loan at his hometown club. Do you know what?
I like the player.
I really do like him. I really do like him, but I think he's one of those players that I just don't think he's Premier League or can't break into it.
Oh, sugar. Yeah, it's a difficult one because I mean, like I say, I like him. Is he part of Gary's plans? I mean, this will all depend on the transfer window, I reckon, and who they may be targeting to bring in, which may spell the end for Macondes.
Do you know what? I think
I'm gonna say no. He's not part of Gary's plans. Will they sell him? Probably not. He'll probably see his contract out on loan somewhere.
That's interesting. That's interesting what you've just said now, because I was going to say he's not part of Gary's plans, and I think as much as I like the player, I think cash in now. At the end of the day, cash in now.
I don't know. Do you know what? I think this might be a case of where they let the player have his contract, and he can move on to anywhere he wants.
I mean, I take a look at his stats back in Norway: 7 league appearances, 3 league goals, and he's also scored. 2 goals in the league apparently, and he's also scored a further 3 in the Danish Cup. Oh no! I've read it wrong.
It's 3
I've read it wrong.
The Danish
I've read
Cup.
it wrong. I've read that wrong. I'm sorry. I've read that wrong. I mean, this season he's made 7 league appearances and scored 3 goals, and that also was his first professional club where he made over 100 appearances and scored nearly 40. You know what? If I were him, I would say, it's time to return home to home comforts. And the one thing against him is that he's 28. He probably might want to just be a little bit closer to home and enjoy the home comforts. And at least with this way, he can regain some confidence, sort of regain his love for the game, and even with he is going to be there on loan for the remainder of the season, which is why he's played few games, but he has scored a few. If I were a member of how do you pronounce that, Nordsaland team, I would speak to Gary and say, you know what, Gaz, we've got our old player back. I think he's happy with us. Let's cut a deal together and we can take him off your hands, because 28 years old, he doesn't have too much long left in the game, given his position. I think he will want to stay in Denmark, stay at that team, and try and just kickstart everything from. He's definitely not going to be a part of Gary's plans at this rate.
Nah,
I
completely.
mean, the thing is, just quickly, very, very quickly, before we move on to the next player, just to touch on this. When we signed Macondes, I actually did debate the longevity of the signing because I always think he's just been promoted with Brentford.
Yes,
He actually scored a goal at Wembley, didn't he?
he did. Yeah,
And they let
he
him
scored a
go.
goal against us.
They let him go after a Wembley final when they
Mm,
get promoted. That says to me that Thomas Frank didn't think he would make it in the Premier League.
and that's where we are.
And I personally think that's where we are, Craig. That's where we are. He's done a job for us in the Championship. I mean, even then, he didn't get game time he wanted. He was signed as well. I think he signed before Paul Parker, Scott Parker actually signed. So, and then he wasn't used as much in the Championship as you thought he would be. And am I surprised he went out on loan? Not really. I know he scored a hat trick for us against Yeovil in the FA Cup, last season, and he had glimmers. I mean, at the start of the season, he looked good. He popped up with a few goals, didn't he? But
Yes.
it kind of just sort of fizzled out. And I did debate the longevity of it when we signed him. But hey ho, we'll see what happens. But I think, Matt, what Manny said there is it's probably along those lines of he's probably not part of Parker's Gary O'Neill's plans, but
Yeah.
I would say it's probably time to move on in some capacity. But let's hit the next one. Let's go.
Go on. Let's do it. Let's do it. Jamal Lowe. So joined QPR in January 2023. This is an easy one for me. It's a no for me, and I think we have to sell him. I think there's a very good player in there, but I think the Championship is his level. And to be honest, QPR have kind of fallen off a cliff, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Another one that I thought, when we signed him in the January, we signed him to get us across the line. He's decent at that level.
Yes.
And I don't think he's quite what we need. He's been a good player for us when he has played, but I don't think he's part of Gary's plans. And I would probably cash in, or again, he will see the rest of his contract out on loan.
Agree.
Can we all agree on something? If a loanee is 26 or 27 or older, immediately sell him. He's 28 years old. He's already a full international with Jamaica, and I think you've pretty much nailed it. He might not be at that elite Premier League level, but he could certainly have a decent career elsewhere in either in the English league.
Oh yeah,
So 28 years old. He's not really going to develop further.
no,
Cut him loose.
totally agree.
Yeah. I would send him back to QPR. I would let him go back, and I think he's enjoyed it there, hasn't he? But even though they've not done very well, from what I understand, he's enjoyed it there. If QPR want him, I would let him go there.
Yeah.
Dembele. This is the weirdest one for me.
Well, you go out on loan for one reason, and that's to play games. He's played one game. I mean, he's a player with a lot of potential, but is he a Premier League player?
He's got a hell of a lot of potential.
And
Hell of a lot of potential.
Also, how old is he?
26.
See, is he going to develop much further? No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. But I really like the player. I can't forget. Was it Blackpool we played? When he
Yeah.
outstanding.
But that's Championship,
Absolutely.
isn't it? That's Championship.
Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it?
Look at what he's played in the Premier League. Sometimes he has come off the bench for, a cameo, and he's looked pretty decent. But he just didn't seem to be given any real game time in the Premier League to be able to judge how he would hold him, conduct himself at this level. We've also got to look at it from the potential of what power have we now got in the transfer market. What
Agree.
players can we now attract in the transfer market? And I think for someone like Dembele, I think if we'd have signed him maybe 2-3 years earlier, he would have had a decent Bournemouth career. But I can't see him being part of the plans.
Do you know what? I completely agree. When I think about it, there's a talented player in there. But that talented player, I'll say this, I'll put my neck out there. If I was Coventry or Luton and I was just being promoted, I would look at this player. I would look at Shriki Dembele and think, actually, he can do a job. He can do a job. He might be fantastic for him. I think there is a lot of quality in Dembele, but not here. Not here. And I think cash him.
I agree. I mean, he went out on loan for a season, only played one game, 26 years old. I think it's best for him if he finds a new club. Simple as that.
But I think he could probably play in the Premier League. Manny, I just
I
don't
love
think.
that, Manny. Nice, short and sweet, and then Craig goes on a Benny about him being able to play in the Premier League. Let's short and sweet, like Manny. Short and sweet.
I mean, it's actually rather harsh. You can't call it sweet, but you take a look at his career stats. He's mostly played in either League One or the Championship, and only 6 games in the Premier League, and just hasn't quite, worked for him. And it is harsh, but sometimes you have to be a little bit harsh. It's a question of selling him for a decent fee and helping him find his feet. I would actually like to see him go back to Scotland, maybe, because he was actually, of course, in the youth systems at Dundee and Ayr United. That's Dundee United and Ayr United. And then, of course, he came down to England. Maybe Scotland could be a place where a lot of English guys could go to resurrect their careers. And maybe he can find some happiness over there, maybe either in the Scottish Premiership or maybe in the Scottish Championship, the division below that. He can work his way up and maybe rediscover his happiness and potential and love for the game. In England, I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity, but Scotland, maybe it's time to move back up north.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Shall we have a look at the next one, guys?
Go on. Ben Pearson. So, joined Stoke on loan in January 2023. 14 appearances, no goals. So he's done a lot better for Stoke than, of course, another player, Kilkenny, that played for us. That plays for us. This is a difficult one. Ben Pearson. I like him. He's tough. He's hard. But he's not Premier League. And if that case, and looking at his contracts and looking at his age, I think it's got to be, I think we've got to let Ben Pearson go.
Yeah, I mean, some of these obviously will return. Most of these, all of these will return for pre-season as it stands, won't it? So room has got to be made in the squad somewhere. So, yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree.
Yeah.
My first question, gentlemen, is why do you have a picture of Ben Pearson and the details of Dembele.
It's not the details of Dembele actually. What it is it's the actual details of Pearson.
Yeah,
Like the
just,
name.
I just forgot to change the name.
Yeah.
It's busy week, so I've been prepping a lot of this stuff about 40 minutes before we kicked off. So
That's
Yeah,
fine.
but
That's fine.
anyway, don't worry about it. And as I said, he's 28 years old. No room for sentiment here. It is very harsh, but sometimes you have to be harsh. And listen, he could find another club in the Championship or League One, maybe. I hope he does. But he's one of those players that you can't afford to hold on to. And of course, former Manchester United youth player, but never made much headway there, and has played in League One and the Championship for most of his career. He had 7 appearances this season in the Premier League before going out to Stoke City. I think it might be time for him to find a new club outside the Premier League, and then maybe, just continue plodding on there. I really don't think Gary will want to keep him. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Yep,
Fair enough.
Next one,
Yep, go for it.
James Hill.
Joined Hearts on loan, January 2023. 16 appearances, no goals. James Hill, of course, he is defender. So I think there's a good, decent player in there. But again, are we shopping in a different? I think with James Hill, we're probably shopping in a different market now than when he joined.
I mean, the only thing is for me is his age. He's still young, isn't he?
He is, yes.
So is it a case of that? I mean, he's got till the summer of 2026 on his contract. He's still developing as a player, isn't he?
Yeah. I know a Cherries fan that actually, took quite an interest in him when he was at Fleetwood. And, he said there's such a talented player in there. Such a talented player in there. But are we shopping in a different market?
Wasn't he Fleetwood's first £1 million transfer?
He was, I think, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen enough of him. I mean, if you see him in training every day and, I mean, I haven't seen any Hearts games that he's played either. I think that he will remain at the club.
Yeah.
But I think he will potentially have another season away from the club.
Yeah, and I would send him to the Championship this time.
Yes, somewhere like that.
Top end of the Championship and Middlesbrough.
Let's see how he develops.
But then again, this is a weird one for me. With defenders, do you necessarily want them to go to the top end of the Championship? Do you want them to go to Rotherham, for example? Now, Rotherham might not be as nice as Middlesbrough or Sunderland or somewhere like that, but Rotherham are going to struggle. And as a defender, you're going to have a lot of chances to show how you can defend and how you can manage that defense. Whereas if you're in a team that is good quality, then the ball's down the other end most of the time and you're just passing it from the back. There's no real threat. You've got a good defender next to you. Yeah, maybe you can learn from that. But sometimes it's better to go to a weak team where you are having to make a lot of challenges. Think about your positioning, corners, coming up against some big men, at the corners in the Championship. Is that a better education for him?
Yeah, it could be. Could well be. It could well be. But yeah, I mean, I think I've.
The thing with me with regard to Hill is that he joined Hearts in January, played about more than a dozen games for them, which is actually really, really good. And Hearts actually, if memory serves me right, are are doing quite well in the Scottish Premiership. Of course, it is what you would call a farmers' league, with Celtic running away with it before faltering late on. Rangers will finish second, and you know, Hearts actually do have a chance of making it in Europe, and playing in Scotland is certainly not. I mean, let's not go ahead and diss the quality of the Scottish Premiership. It's actually a pretty decent
Yeah.
league, and I will check the current season for Heart of Midlothian and just confirm where they are. Yeah, the table will pretty much confirm that they will. I mean, they are actually currently in fourth, not third. And so, with maybe a round of games to play, they will reach the second qualifying round of the Europa Conference League. So, he could have European action. And Hearts are one of those clubs who will obviously look to try to maintain their position at the top of the, sort of in the top area of the table. So, it is quite a challenge for him. And I think he might relish going back to Edinburgh for another season and sort of experience, playing with a few Scottish internationals and the atmosphere over there. He might actually enjoy it, and of course, because he's so young, you can't just throw him away. Keep him, send him on loan either back to Edinburgh or maybe to another club, as Matt has said. I mean,
Fair enough.
I keep saying it's the age that is sort of a good bargaining chip for him, really.
There we are.
Yeah, I agree with that. Should
Yeah.
you look at the next one?
Yep, the final one, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's our final one. So Will Dennis, obviously for part of last season was our second choice keeper, wasn't he? He's obviously gone on loan to Slough. Played 21 games, keeping 4 clean sheets. But the goalkeeping department's very strong at the minute.
And there's only one place. And the thing is, it's very difficult. Say, for example, defenders rotate. Goalkeepers don't really, because, a goalkeeper will only be replaced if another one is injured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously, as it stands, you've got Neto number 1, Travs is number 2,
Yeah.
and Randolph is third choice.
I'm not too sure what Darren Randolph was thinking leaving West Ham to come to Bournemouth. No disrespect, but with West Ham, he was a part of a team that was competing for European silverware, and this season they could win the Conference League. And now at Bournemouth, he could very well end up being third choice. I don't even know what sort of involvement he's got, but you pretty much said it. I mean, there are 3 senior goalkeepers right now. All 3 of them have been internationals for their countries. Both of them, 2 of them Irish, in fact. So with Will Dennis, yes, he's got age on his side, but then do you really keep him and loan him again? No, this might be an exception to the rule of the ages, where you say you don't just want to keep a young keeper like him on the books just for the sake of having him learn and train under 3 senior goalkeepers and not have any real tangible first team action. You can't have him continuing to play for the youth team and the reserves. He needs to develop his game, I think, and maybe it might be right to let him go and find a new club, but you could always buy him back if let's say Randolph retires and Neto also gets on a little bit. Maybe in the future he could be an option. Who knows?
Fair. Yep, I completely agree. Completely agree on that one.
Well, that concludes having a look at the Forgotten Men, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It certainly does. So, of course, this weekend, last game of the season, we travel up to Goodison Park. It's a big game for them. Probably not so big for us. Leeds and Leicester are hoping that we can do them a favour. Let's have a look at our history against the Toffees and also the players that have played for both. This isn't going to be a long one. So, of course, players who were once a toffee, but also was once a cherry as well. So the first player is Joe Parkinson. He played for both Everton and Bournemouth. Of course, was in the 1995 FA Cup final. Paul Rideout scored the winner in that final, but also played one season at Dean Court.
Next is
Next, Asmir Begovic.
Yes.
So yes, a big man in the goal. Good goalkeeper. Of course, had two stints here as well.
he did. He had a loan stint when he was a much younger goalkeeper, when he was at Pompey. Yeah, good keeper, like you say, Craig. Obviously dropped down to the Championship with us, didn't he? If Everton get relegated, Jordan Pickford is bound to move on. You could well see Begovic as their number one in the Championship, and that wouldn't surprise me. He did it for a season with Bournemouth. I'm sure he'd do it for a season with Everton.
Yep, definitely. Let's have a look at the next one. Ewan O'Kane, of course, was in the squad at the start, well, for the first season in the Premier League.
Yes.
Joined Leeds, didn't he, for a while?
Yeah, he went to Leeds, and that was the player that I forgot to put on the Leeds. Played for both. But yeah, he went on to Leeds after us, but began his youth days at Everton. So let's have a look at the next player, Sylvain Distin.
Very much travelled.
Good player. He still lives locally, actually, in the Bournemouth Pool area, because he actually trains at the gym with a friend of mine, and she was training with him for about, I don't know, I think about 2, 3, 4 months before she realised who he was. And nice guy as well. But was really useful for Bournemouth in our first season in the Premier League. Yeah, good player, good strong player. Much travelled, like you say, Manny. Pompey, Man City, Everton, obviously Bournemouth. Anyone else?
I'll have to look him up and say. I mean, you mentioned Fulham, Manchester City. Obviously, those are the names that come to my mind. French former footballer. Let's see what clubs he's had. Newcastle United, and of course before that, Paris Saint-Germain.
Of course, Newcastle. Yes, of course.
And with Portsmouth, he was a part of the team that won the FA Cup under a certain Mr. Henry James Redknapp.
Of course. Well, let's go to the next one. Dan Gosling.
Oh yes,
Who's featured a lot lately on Cherry Picking. Yes, played for Everton. I do believe Everton purchased him from Plymouth Argyle. I do believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
And he also went on to represent Newcastle as well. But yeah, that's Dan Gosling. So like I say, we've had quite a bit recently with the number 4s and other clubs. So let's have a look at the next one. And another guy that we've seen quite a lot of lately,
yes,
Josh King. And this last one's quite a funny one.
Crikey.
Now, I don't know if anyone wants to have a go at pronunciation here. Maybe Manny's the man.
Johnny Vidarson.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Bajani Vidarson. Yeah.
Yep.
I think he was kind of on the fringes of the first team. I don't think he made many first team appearances at Everton, but We played Everton in a friendly at Dean Court. They brought quite a full strength squad down actually. I'm going back down to when Vidardson signed after, so I'm going back 2005, 2004. And he actually played in that game. And then we signed him on loan. But yeah, so that is the end of our played for both this week. I've probably missed people. Like I say, I've had a busy old week, as Craig well knows, and
Yes.
so if I have missed anybody, please pop it in the comments, and then I can go into the corner of the room and kick myself.
Honestly, don't worry. Let's have a look. This is going to be long at the results.
Oh, the history of the head-to-head.
The history of the head-to-head between Everton and AFC Bournemouth is one page.
So obviously, with Everton spending the majority of their history in the top flight, and Bournemouth spending the majority of their history in the basement of the leagues, there's been very limited action. Now,
Yes.
prior to the year 2015, we played Everton 3 times, 1937 and twice in 1985. All cup games, which we lost all of them, coincidentally. But then we have the Premier League era, where obviously we started in 2015 in November with that epic 3-3 draw at Dean Court, which a lot of people will remember. Then the couple of wins we've had at Dean Court around 2016, 2017. But as you can see, our recent form against Everton has been pretty good. So the last game, obviously the game we got relegated, we beat them 3-1.
Yes.
Then we had a cup game this year, didn't we, at Dean Court? We played them on the Tuesday, and then we played them again on the Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously that was when Mr. Lampard was in charge, and we managed to beat him convincingly both times. So it's going to be a different kind of game on Sunday in comparison to the previous two. It's going to be like a cauldron up there, and they are going to want to get that win to obviously stay in the Premier League and play us again next year, where hopefully we can beat them again.
If I could just say so... Go ahead, Craig. Sorry about that, mate.
You look at all the results against them, and to be honest, we've got quite a decent record against Everton.
We have, yeah.
This is a one-off. This isn't like a Premier League game. This is a game that Everton are desperate to win. They have to win it.
Well, it's a cup final for them, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, the thing is with the Everton games, they've always been goal-scoring games.
Yeah.
So, do you know what? Sunday, I'm going to predict that we see quite a few goals.
That's an interesting one.
Now, which net they go in, I'm not going to say, because I don't know, because it's one of those games. It's going to be cagey at times.
I don't think it will be. In fact, what I would suggest is I'm not going to tell you what my prediction is here, but if you go on to the opposition preview show, and if you also go on to the show with regards to who is staying in the Premier League, that will tell you my prediction. But I don't think it's going to be as, crazy as the previous games. I think it's going to be a lot closer. Maybe the scoreline might not be in the end, but
I think if Bournemouth score first, that place is going to erupt, because they are going to have to get behind them to get back in the game.
it could go the other way. And this is what I was saying to Connor with regards to, I think that the Everton fans might get really on their back, and there'd be a lot of anger around Goodison Park if they go 1-0 down. Especially, imagine that coupled with a goal elsewhere. Those players will know it. But when I spoke to Benjamin Bloom, and I have to agree with him on this, if Everton take the lead early on, it'll be very difficult to get back in it, because all we're really playing for is an increase in prize money. They're playing for survival, and every ball at that point, their fans will be kicking with them. And I think it's going to be a very, very difficult game. I think you'll find how it's going to go will be dictated in the first 20 minutes. If we score first, it could be all shackles off. It could be a crazy place that, it's going to be very, very hostile. If they score first, then those fans are really going to get behind their side.
It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, we are doing the watch along.
We are, yes, yes.
There'll be 3 of us doing the watch along again this time. Be myself, Craig, and doing the watch along. And hopefully, we will have our very own Chris Kamara in Carlard, who will hopefully be joining us as well to keep us on the results. So, it should be a good one. Not heading into the game, then tune in and be good to see everybody there. And straight after, about an hour or so after, I think we're doing it, aren't we? Will be the traditional Sunday evening free for all, which we will announce the time in due course. And that's probably going to be a little bit more random, and get as many people as we can, and just talk about the games of the day in general, I suppose, really, and rather than just focusing on the Bournemouth Everton game. If other teams join us, we'll chat about their games as well. So it could be quite an interesting free for all.
Connor from the Toffee Blues has said that he will come on.
Interesting.
I would say leave that probably, in the back of our minds that he might come on. But if I was him, and if Everton do stay up, I'd be out on the town and getting absolutely wasted. So there we go. We don't blame you, Connor, if you're not going to end up coming on. So if you're celebrating too hard. So there we are. Very, very short history with Everton. And like I say, please go check out that relegation show. It is about an hour and a half long, but you can find out from each of the club's fans and then find out my predictions at the end. And I even put in the little graph. And what we'll do is we'll collect some predictions from the panel as well, and we'll put those into a separate video. So if you want to find out what we all predict, go ahead. So let's have a look at the Hall of Fame. And the winner of the Hall of Fame, I was going to try and do it in an American accent. I was going to try and do it in an American accent.
No, please.
No.
Don't.
There you are, Manny spoken. Darren Anderton.
We'll now join the likes of Super Fletch, Ted McDougall, Redknapp, and Luther Blissett, and the names are starting to really build up in there now. So thanks to everybody voting every week. There will be one more round of the Hall of Fame, which we'll see we'll have a look at in a second. But then the Hall of Fame will return in August.
Yep, it will do.
So we will. The summer, we'll have a break from the Hall of Fame for the summer. So,
yes.
But just have a look at Daz's stats. He was up against Mark Steen and Jimmy Case, to which he earned 53% of the vote.
Yes.
Steno coming in there at 40%, which was quite quite a good percentage for Steno. I thought Dazza was going to walk away with it, but Steno kept tabs on him, and unfortunately Jimmy Case ended with 8%.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the Hall of Fame as it stands now after last week's inductees and this week's inductees. So now we have a grand total of, what's that there? 10 players, isn't it? 10 players now.
11.
11, is it?
11.
11
Yeah.
in there now.
Got a whole squad.
Got 11 now.
Almost a whole squad, except you got 2 goalkeepers, but just
Yes.
a few more outfielders, and that would be it. I mean, you'd have a squad that would be good enough to give any Premiership team a run for their money.
2 decent five-a-side teams, eh?
Definitely.
So,
Well, I'll tell you what, it will be an outfielder player this week.
yes, it will be. It will be, because Craig, you've chosen them this week on
I
the
have,
theme
yeah.
of, what was it, the 2014-15 squad, wasn't it?
Exactly, yes.
Right,
So
take
shall
it
we?
away, Craig.
So the first one is Tommy Elphick. He's a strong leader, took us into the Premier League the first time round as course captain. Dependable defender. He was never scared of dodging a tackle, good in the air, and he could pop up with a goal or two as well. Forever remember his pre-match superstition with the goalpost as well. And of course, Tommy is part of the club still at Dean Court. And also, there was a mural, wasn't there, in Lansdowne of Tommy Elphick? Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, if nobody's if any of our exiles haven't seen that, what we'll do is we'll stick it up on our Twitter account and Facebook.
Definitely. The next one you chosen then, Craig, is
Mark Pugh. So we'll always remember his goal against Bolton, coming from League One to the Premier League, of course, signed from Hereford. Mark always gave 110%, loved his passion for playing, and he is really a true gentleman of the game. You got to check out the Foodie Footballer as well, because it'll make you very hungry if you haven't eaten.
so Mark Pugh, and your final choice, Craig, tonight is.
Well, everybody kind of knew that I was going to pick Steve Cook, one of my favourite players of all time at this football club. Honestly, it was a pleasure to interview him. It was just before, of course, that dramatic. Well, he just threw his body on the line against Fulham, and I tell you what, absolutely amazing that day. He was brilliant. He was absolutely bloody brilliant that day. He's got his testimonial coming up. He was always reliable, put his body on the line, as it says there. Great. He scored some great goals. That one at Newcastle, that header, of course, that's in the top left-hand corner there. I could not sing. I don't think there's any words that I could give to not sing his praises. I think he's brilliant, and lovely man who was always doing everything for anybody. So yeah, Cookie has to be my choice. And if anybody's not seen it, go and watch that interview with him before he went to Nottingham Forest. And yeah, I was a bit gutted about that, but
Link will be in the description.
it will be, yes, yeah. The link will be in the description, so you can go and watch it, or you could just scroll back through the interview page. Just go onto the main landing page, scroll back through the interviews, and you'll find it. You'll find it. It's in the old style of thumbnails. So yeah, if you go past the point where we transformed to a little bit more of professional, shall we call it, style, you will find the interview with Steve Cook.
Yeah, I have just one question. I mean, obviously, until quite recently, Steve and Lewis were both in the team. So if Steve Cook was Cookie, how did you address Lewis?
I just called him Lewis, but he was on the back of his shirt was L Cook.
And Lewis is still at the club.
And there we go. That is our Hall of Fame. You will be able to find it on Twitter, so do head over there now. So, of course, we've got one cherry picking left to go. Thank you again, Matt, as always, for joining me, and also Manny. It's been good fun again, hasn't it?
Always, always, always. No complaints at all. I know these episodes have a tendency to go quite long, but I'm always happy to be a part of them. No complaints.
Definitely, definitely. And thank you everybody for joining us. Hit the like, the subscribe, all the likes of the videos, follow whatever it's called on your streaming platform. We are absolutely everywhere now, going into your ears. So until the next video, up the cherries, and we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us.